Recorded live from TCR Studios in Melbourne, Florida. This is the Cannabis Report with Michael Patterson, brought to you by MGMC Pharma. We make a difference. Check out the virtual tour of our cannabis cultivation facility on our website at mgmc-group.com. Now, here's your host, Michael Patterson.
Welcome everybody in from all over the planet. My name is Michael Patterson.
And I'm Mark. Hello.
Hey. So we are coming to you live from Florida, and we're very excited about having our guest on today, Lezli Engelking, out of Focus, which is a group looking to make standards for the cannabis industry for the United States, which I think could bleed over to other countries, which is very exciting.
She's out of Arizona, about the same weather as us today, right? 60 and sunny here in Central Florida.
Beautiful Florida. So if the first time you're watching our show or listening to us, definitely please subscribe on our YouTube channel, which is the Cannabis Report with Michael Patterson.
Or the Space Ghost Podcast.
And then looking up on, if you're looking for a Spotify or an Apple Music, go under Space Coast Podcast, and then you will see the Cannabis Report with Michael Patterson. So I'd love to have your input. If you've never seen us before, our goal is to give you a good overview about different places, about different aspects of the cannabis space, cannabis industry, ways to get involved, and meeting other great people who are in this space. So definitely excited to be here. Episode number 4, we are on.
Quattro,
absolutely. So we're looking to do this and make it bigger and bigger and get more followers to really preach that message. And so one of the things that we do put up a lot is a hashtag called Compassionate Army.
CA30K.
Right, CA30K. I have 30,000 plus followers on LinkedIn. Again, LinkedIn, Michael Patterson, U.S. Cannabis Pharmaceutical. And the people who follow me and watch this show are part of the Compassionate Army. We're all working to make things better through the use of cannabis around the planet. And so that's our mission, and that's what we're here for. And so now it's time for us to go into some cannabis news.
Let's do the news, Jesse.
It's time for Cannabis News.
News today brought to you by ICS, Integrated Compliance Solutions, and its merchant processing division, Greenlight Payments, are the industry leaders in banking and payment processing solutions for the cannabis industry. Since 2014, ICS has been used by more banks and more cannabis-related businesses for their compliant cannabis banking needs than any other solution provider in the industry, Mike.
They are. Yep.
For more information, go to icslv.com. All right, first story. Virginia poised to legalize adult use cannabis. Virginia Governor Ralph Northam administration announced adult use marijuana sales would begin January 1st, 2023 under the current proposal, which looks as if it has a good chance of succeeding in this year's legislature, according to the Richmond Times-Dispatch. Governor Northam said in November he would press for an adult use marijuana program. Virginia is among the states eyeing legal marijuana as a way to boost tax revenues to offset the economic impacts of COVID. Voter approval of adult use legalization in New Jersey in November also has put pressure on states in the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast regions to act. In fact, New York Governor Cuomo last week renewed his push for recreational marijuana legalization in the state of New York. So, Mike, it looks like the dominoes are falling in the Northeast, even past the Mason-Dixon line into Virginia.
Yeah, let me tell you. So if you're not familiar, if you're listening overseas or watching us, Virginia is a very critical state because it's the beginning of the South. And so if you don't know about the southern United States, things move a little bit slower. Mark and I are originally from North Carolina.
Yep.
And Virginia, our grandparents and our parents are from there. And little aside, our grandfather used to sell cannabis legally.
He did.
South Boston, Virginia at his
the drugstore,
Patterson Drugstore.
South Boston, Virginia. He sold hemp and
sold medical cannabis, not hemp back then, until 1937. When it became illegal and he stopped selling.
Yeah, but what didn't Dad tell you that? I mean, or you told Dad that and then he remembered it, right?
He remembered. And so we found out there's one of our distant cousins who actually lives in Portsmouth, Virginia, Llewellyn Smith. We have another Llewellyn that you know, Mark, that it was a relative that we have, but apparently Slayton, you know Llewellyn Slayton. So Llewellyn Smith, she called me. She is a master's in science of nursing, and she's on the American Cannabis Nurses Association board. So
Wow.
that association. Anyway, she called me because of our mutual knowledge of cannabis, and she told me about how our grandfather did that. We didn't even know that.
Wow.
And we found that out. I found that out 2 or 3 years ago, and that's where my personal journey in cannabis has taken me to learn that
Look
I
at
come
that.
from
A family lineage.
family lineage of prescribing, or not prescribing, but offering medical cannabis legally. So, which is extremely unique and actually in Virginia. So, yeah, Virginia's going to play a major role moving forward in the East Coast legalization, which is pushing the federal government to do something on this. And Lezli will be talking about that later in the show.
Second story, Jay-Z getting into cannabis. He touts into cannabis prohibition as Rock Nation finalized a SPAC deal with Caliva Left Coast Ventures. So a consortium made up of CMG partners, Left Coast Ventures, and Jay-Z with his company Rock Nation have finalized its previously announced transaction with Subversive Capital Acquisition Corp. The newly formed company, seems like I've said 5 different names for the same company, but the newly formed company has been dubbed TPC Holding, or another name, the parent company. So the parent company projects to hit $334 million in 2021. Consumer reach is expected to be 75% in California by the end of the year and almost 90% by the year 2022. Mike, what did I just talk about?
This is the challenge, okay? So Jay-Z's getting in the business, but remember, he's not coming in on a publicly a big exchange. He's coming in on a smaller exchange. Some people call it pink sheets and different types of things in the space because no major exchange is going to allow a THC-based product in the United States. That's why all these companies are going into Canada primarily to go public. And the SPAC they're talking about is stands for, I believe, a special purpose acquisition company or corporation or entity.
Yes.
So basically, this is a way these companies can go public and
Subversive Capital Acquisition Corp.
there you go. So it's something that's trending, not just in cannabis, but it's trending in a lot of different businesses, and so you can go public quicker. So just be aware that this entity will primarily getting their sales out of the West Coast. So it's mainly in a cannabis recreational market.
So they're partnering with current recreational companies?
Caliva is a very well-known company in California that does cannabis. Primarily, they do medical, but remember, California, for all intents and purposes, is more of a medical state, a recreational state. And then on the East Coast, most of our states currently are medical, but as you can hear in our previous story,
right?
It's coming, yeah. So it's more regulated on the East Coast, a little less regulated on the West Coast. So what I envision is I think this is going to be a good deal for the industry. For that company specifically, I don't know all the details on what their profit margins are and who's running the company. As you look into investing in companies, one of the most important things to look at is who is managing that group. Because if you have people who either don't understand cannabis or don't understand general business and never run a company before, the chances of success are very, very low. So you really need to understand the backgrounds of these people who are running these organizations and make sure they understand what they're doing.
Well, and that goes into the fact that you keep talking about Cannabis 2.0. Cannabis 1.0 is like everybody was coming into the market. It's like, oh, I'm going to get rich. It's going to be awesome. I'm not going to be retired in 2 weeks.
Right.
And then they figure out, wow.
And then they realize, wow, there's a lot more to this than just
like any other business.
Growing weed. And so
Right.
you get the difference between making cannabis in your spare bedroom and doing it on an industrial scale.
But even the CEOs, they just the Cannabis 1.0s, we've seen how some of these CEOs grown these companies, and that they just they didn't really know what to do with them or whatever. They just weren't professionally savvy when it comes to running businesses, in my opinion.
Right.
So they are kind of on the way out, and then you have basically big pharma and all these major corporations. Now they're starting to see the light. The green tsunami is coming.
It is, but I think what you do see too is you want people who understand the space. For example, you had MedMen who had Adam Bierman as a CEO, and they're kind of falling apart because, in my opinion, the management was not good because they'd never run a company. I mean,
right? That's
ever.
what I meant. Yes.
So how can you sit there and run $1 billion company when you've never run any company at all with more than 10 or 15 people?
Right.
It's totally different.
It would be a challenge.
Well, like for me, I've run pharmaceutical companies. I've run nursing home chains. We did over $230 million in total sales. I've been sued more times than God, basically, in the nursing home business.
Your company has, not you,
not me,
personally.
yes. But I understand risk.
Okay.
I understand compliance. Leslie's going to be talking a lot about compliance a little bit later in the show. with her group Focus. But yeah, it's something to notice about the Jay-Z business. But let's see how it goes. Put it that way.
All right, our last news story: the UFC will no longer punish fighters for using cannabis in most cases, making a major change to its anti-doping policy. The world's largest mixed martial arts promotion confirmed Thursday will no longer worry about positive tests for THC, the psychoactive ingredient in cannabis, unless it believes a fighter used it intentionally to enhance performance. That's going to be a challenge to prove. UFC will no longer punish marijuana cases. And the bottom line is that in regard to marijuana, we care about when an athlete consumed the day of the fight, not days or weeks before a fight, which has often been the case in our historic positive THC cases, the UFC states. UFC athletes will still be subject to marijuana rules under various athletic commission regulations, but we hope this is a start to a broader discussion and changes on this issue with that group. The Nevada State Athletic Commission last year reduced its potential suspensions for marijuana use to 6 months, while California Commission only fines fighters $100. So, Mike, UFC is not testing anymore. The NBA, what's the rule on the NBA?
The NBA recently just they did a pass, basically say due to COVID, we're not going to test this year for cannabis.
Right.
A lot of people feel that's never going to come back. What you're seeing here, it's bigger than the UFC, it's bigger than NBA.
MLB, right?
MLB has already come out and basically said that you can use cannabis, and and they're not going to get fined for it. UFC just came out. NFL is saying they're only going to test once per year, and they're going to let everybody know ahead of time when they're testing. So it pretty much you can use it there. And if you notice, when they made that, that's when Gronkowski came back. Because remember, Gronkowski retired, and then right after he retired, he became a spokesman for a CBD company.
Yeah.
And he specifically said if they ever allow CBD or cannabis in the NFL, he'll come back. And then he came back. So they recognize that. And so the bigger thing to recognize, though, is the sociological and the psychological impact to us, to our society, on what's going on. We're starting to see cannabis normalized.
Prohibition hangover going away.
That prohibition hangover is basically anybody who can't get past cannabis being legal and puts impediments in our way. There's still a lot of people out there who don't want to see us fail, meaning me, you, everybody else, to make this legal, to make things better. Because remember, we're upsetting the apple cart. A lot of people make a lot of money for alcohol and pharmaceuticals that aren't cannabis-based, and that's going to change everything. And so that leads it up to people like us, and you'll hear about Lezli with Focus coming in about what she's doing to make sure we can have the proper regulation in place to make sure we can move forward in this nation to benefit as many people as possible.
And that's it for the news, Mike.
All right. This is great. Let's move into getting Lezli introduced and start talking to Lezli.
Okay. Starting with me. I guess that's my turn now.
That's your turn.
Okay,
yes.
We're off to the desert Southwest in beautiful Scottsdale, Arizona with our guest today. This Arizona State University grad is the ultimate self-starter with 20 years experience in cannabis, government relations, pharmaceutical, mental health, and nonprofit. In 2014, she founded the foundation of Cannabis Unified Standards, or FOCUS, an international nonprofit cannabis standards organization dedicated to protecting public health, consumer safety, and safeguarding the environment. It's all about the regulation. Let's give a warm Cannabis Report welcome to Lezli Engelking.
Lezli, welcome to the show.
What up?
Hi, guys. Good to have you on. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So excited to be with you all the way from Arizona. How's the weather there? Is it nice?
Amazing. Yeah, we've got 75 and blue skies right now, so this is the time to be in Arizona, not the summer.
Right. So tell me, on average temperature in August?
110?
I mean, I'm guessing it's got to be over 110, but not exactly sure what the number is.
Yeah.
Somewhere between 110 and 117.
Doesn't matter, really.
Between 110 and 117.
Well, these guys, y'all
Fire in your face all the
y'all
time.
in Arizona, you hibernate in the summer. That's what we do in South Florida. We hibernate in the summer because it's so daggum hot, and then everybody's outside all the time in the winter. So it's totally opposite of what most people would do. Or we're just like Australia, pretty much.
To a certain degree. So, Lezli, do me a favor. Give us a background on how you got into this space initially, because this is going to be fascinating.
I mean, reluctantly is the best one-word answer I could come up with.
Okay.
That.
All right.
I had spent my early career in public health and mental health, and then I spent 13 years working for Eli Lilly. When I was leaving Lilly, Arizona had just passed cannabis for medical use, and some friends here wanted to apply for a license, and they were looking for somebody that had the pharmaceutical experience and the public health background and things, and asked me if I would be the applicant for the license. And at first I said, absolutely no way. My dad is a defense attorney, and my mom's a public servant. So
love to hear those conversations over Christmas dinner.
Yeah, well, and this is back in 2010, 2011. So the industry has changed quite a bit, right? It's much more mainstream now. But in the end, they wore me down. They provided a bunch of articles and information and studies on the benefits of cannabis. And I decided to give it a shot and see how it went on a temporary basis. Like most things that are new in cannabis businesses, the wheels come off right when you get started. Yeah. So I spent 2.5 years in that position as executive director, as the first chain of vertical licenses in Phoenix, running the operations from top to bottom. And we did everything from, cultivating, extracting infused products to, 6 retail stores, full wholesale and all that. So I spent a lot of time and got to learn firsthand the benefits of this plant and how many amazing things were happening and what a great alternative it was to some of the traditional pharmaceuticals and whatnot. And with that information, I felt convinced that I wanted to be involved with this industry, but having been, firsthand experience business owner, lack of standards, and my background with quality and safety just really came to the forefront. I saw all of the people I knew and the businesses that I knew struggling to run their businesses efficiently and effectively and mitigate risk and, minimize problems and create safe quality products. And so I started doing some research, kind of looking at other industries and what had happened, and realized that in any industry, regardless of what it is, standards come before regulation, and in fact, generally guide regulation.
Well, they should. They should. So
exactly. Yes. Normal industries, if it's food or drug or pharma, it's the agencies that are responsible for licensing the operations that develop good manufacturing practice guidelines and standards that help the operators meet the regulations. But because cannabis in the United States has come up from the state level and not the federal level, we've developed all these rules without any standards to back them or to base them upon, and which is part of the reason we have different rules in every state.
Right.
And it's part of the reason that we have such a heavy emphasis on testing in this industry, which is obviously a very, very big cost center and troublesome. You guys talk about this stuff on your shows all the time.
You sit there and you mentioned as an aside with the lab testing is, there have been labs that have been getting false results because they need the business. So I saw it.
Lab shopping is the norm.
Yep.
Yeah, no, it's. And you think about how the rules and the regs in not just in Arizona, but across the United States happen, right? There's state governments, they're lobbying, they're voter initiatives a lot of the time. And so the people with the money for these labs, the lab rules get in there. But the reality, in my opinion, and trust me, I want to clarify and say I very, very much support third-party testing, and it is a critical component of any quality program. But most businesses do their own in-house testing, and they run under a quality management system so that they're preventing all the problems before they get to the testing stage. We tell our clients that are certified that they should know what their test result will be before they get it back from the lab. And if they don't and they get something that surprises them, we want to know about it, because it's either a problem with their process or a problem with the lab process. And if it's theirs, we need to fix it, because that's where products don't go well.
and to add to that is what I'm seeing is I recommend to the clients too is that you need to have in-house testing, because what happens if you send it to the third-party lab and it's 10% off on your THC? In some states, that's a felony. So if you're mislabeling the product, and then if you're the CEO, you're going to prison and you have no backup. But if you say, whoa, we did internal testing and this is not right, so you're somehow preventing that. And so what I'm hearing you say is, based on your background in compliance and quality and safety, you come at this where I come at this from regards of a nursing home chain. When I used to run the nursing home chain, we got sued all the time. And you start learning about compliance and risk, and you start thinking about mitigation, and also you start thinking about intent. So if the intent is to get product there and you're not putting in safety and quality, then now your liability goes up dramatically because you had the ability to do something, you did nothing. So there was a case in California where Exhibit was he made all the rapper made all these vape cartridges, and they said it was all natural and no pesticides. Well, some smart guy went around and bought all the different cartridges, and then took them to a lab, and then they were all had contaminants. Then he set up a class action lawsuit against Exhibit, and it cost them millions of dollars because they were just stupid. So, yes, I agree with you 100%. And see, sounds like that's how you kind of moved into focus.
It is. It's liability and risk and good business practices, right? I mean, everything that we do is about putting preventative steps into a cannabis operation so that they know the outcome that should be expected. And if there's any deviation, that they have the proper tools to first identify that deviation, second, find out the root cause of that, and third, fix it so it doesn't happen again. And then everything downstream from that is the products that have been released that might be impacted, just like in any recall, obviously, is another whole section to it. But everything focus is a partnership designed to build the cannabis business into everything they want it to be.
Okay.
The first part is always about meeting standards, but the idea is to really have a quality management system that's comprehensive, that documents everything you're doing, that you can plan ahead and plan to scale so that you're not making decisions day to day and drinking out of a fire hose, which is what I typically see in this space.
Yeah. And I see that too. And also the way you and I are the same in the fact that if you leave your business and your business falls apart, that's on you. Because you didn't put the systems in place.
Tell him, Mike.
It is. I hate this stuff. Like years ago, I had to go. My sister got married in Spain. This is 15 years ago. And I had to go for 2 weeks. And the owner, Mark, was there too. We let him come. And then we sit there, and the owner goes, well, how is the company going to survive without you for 2 weeks? And I said, if the company can't survive without me for 2 weeks, then I haven't done my job. And so that sounds like what you're saying is you need to have the systems in place when you do this, because if you don't, it will fail. And all these people who are investing in your company and expecting what you're doing, and you don't, then now your personal liability goes up because you brought them into an investment where you said you knew what you were doing and you didn't.
Uh-oh. Yep.
Right. Exactly. So
that's 100% it.
Right. And with Focus, tell me how are you getting any traction for state legislators and federal people in Congress to talk to them about the need and the requirement that we're going to need as an industry across the United States in putting those in place?
For sure. I mean, you have to remember that I left my job, in 2013. So Focus has been at this, even though I still consider us very much a startup in the truest sense of the word. We've been at this for 7 years. Okay. So we do definitely, we're very fortunate to have great working relationships with regulatory agencies at the state and federal level. We're really excited we've been working for the last year and a half on model code for hemp manufacturing, just because the Hemp Farm Bill did not address the manufacturing side of things. So we've been working with the Association Food and Drug Policy. I want to say, though, Focus does not do any lobbying. As a rule, and our position around that is really that we firmly believe in cannabis. We truly want to see a safe, our vision is a safe, legal, and sustainable global cannabis industry. But we won't push regulations. We don't advocate. We are simply a health and safety organization. We're an independent third party with no financial stake in or funding from the industry. So because we don't do a lot of lobbying, we don't get into those conversations like some of the big guys do.
Got it.
Fortunately, because what we've developed provides so much value to these regulatory agencies that they come to us.
Good.
Nice. So you're basically, Lezli, so you're, the focus is a resource, basically. So, I'm a state government. We never really legalized cannabis before, not really looking towards a lobbyist, and you can be like, you're the resource. You would come in and help guide them through that process and be best for everyone.
Yep. We can do any of that. We can, the standards themselves can be adopted as regulations, as is if they want to, they can cut and paste. But we do a lot of training for regulators, helping them with their audit skills, knowing what to look at. Recently, in the last couple of years, the states have started to finally ask for SOPs and, HACCP plans and things that really are important to quality and safety and of not just the products, but the facility and the employees. Unfortunately, most states that are requesting these don't have a very thorough or effective review process. So as long as you're turning in something that looks like an SOP, it works.
And SOP, sorry to interrupt, but SOP is standard operating procedures for those
Apologies.
who are not. That's okay.
Yes, and please interrupt me anytime I do that. But
That's okay.
and standard operating procedures are like a recipe. You know what I mean? So if you're going to make a cake, it's really important which order you put the ingredients in, right? Some things may not go, the icing doesn't go in the batter.
Yes.
Right.
And that's all a standard operating procedure is. But unfortunately, because the states haven't looked at them, there's a big practice of just, I need SOP templates.
Right.
They may or may not reflect what I'm doing. And so what you see is cannabis companies spending a lot of money on these templates that don't actually help them get better at what they do. That is the opposite of what Focus is about.
Right.
We are truly about providing a way for a cannabis business to take a step back and say, I want to control all my risks. I want to know everything going on in my operation, and I want it to get better and better over time. That's what we help them do.
Which is a very foreign concept sometimes to people in cannabis. I'm always telling people,
in cannabis for sure.
I want you to find all the problems now, because if I find them, then if somebody else, meaning the state or others, find them, then we have a problem. For example, there was a company in Pittsburgh that had a grower processor license, and they lost their license because apparently they could not find 3 to 4 days of video, which is required by the state to show in 24/7, 365, and nobody knew where it went. That is a major problem, which cost them a license worth millions of dollars. And so, what I'm hearing you say, Lezli, is compliance is key. And one of the phrases I always use is, you will always pay for compliance, and it is always cheaper up front.
It's absolutely true. It's also easier up front, right?
Yes.
It's just so painless if you plan for it and you do it as part of the business development and structure build out and stuff. It is much more difficult and more costly when you have to do rework and go back and change things that are existing. And I can even say that from personal experience. I mean, Focus got started. We wanted to become accredited internationally, but the accreditation bodies in the U.S. weren't ready for us.
Right.
So we engaged, and they gave us our money back in 2014 and said, sorry, we're not comfortable. It's federally illegal. We're now just finishing up our accreditation as a cannabis-specific certification body.
Awesome.
That's, an international ISO certification through ANSI. We couldn't do that back then.
And it's interesting because you were so far ahead of the curve that everybody's starting to catch up. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show, to show people that, Lezli obviously is not doing this for the money, okay? Because she would have stepped there and stepped in the private industry and kept going that route, But what Lezli is doing, and what people don't understand, is she is helping us create the standardization that we desperately need in this industry. One final question is, moving forward in the United States, say we can get cannabis legalized at the federal level, what do you see as some of the biggest problems when it comes to all these different regulations?
Challenges, Mike, not problems.
Challenges to get all this to get some regulations on a uniform standard at a federal level.
I mean, I don't think getting the standards themselves are difficult, right? We wrote them in 2013. We've given them to ASTM through a licensing agreement, and we give them to Standards Jamaica to use in Jamaica under a licensing agreement. The challenge is just big ships turn slowly. I mean, it's the federal government And while they are all these different little ships, they're part of this big shift. And that is just this very slow process, which is why standards are even more important in cannabis, because if standards can guide the industry into good practices that are standardized and can be the same across the board, the regulations can follow very easily. I think one of the great things that we've seen, I guess it was the end of last year, 2020, but is the new CANRA, the Cannabis Regulatory Association, where state regulators are actually having an association to get together and talk about what's going on. This is something that I have facilitated for states for years through the Association of Food and Drug Officials, hosting cannabis, discussion sessions with regulators from across the country 7 or 8 times, every year. And it's needed. Like, progress comes from communication and collaboration and understanding what challenges are there and working to find a solution that works for everybody. So I think that's great. We're excited to have that. If you're trying to get me to talk about when is this going to happen,
I didn't notice I didn't say when. So
yeah, I know. That seems to be what everybody always wants to know.
Right.
And I do not make any guesses or predictions. I will say we're not even close.
And see, for me, I beg to differ.
Whoa, pump the brakes. I'm not even close. Lezli, oh my goodness.
That's what I'm saying is,
wow.
So and the thing is,
so it depends. If you're talking about getting a bill passed to decriminalize cannabis, that could happen.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm talking about full regulatory oversight and control of cannabis products.
So Lezli, I'm right there with you. So what I vision, what I propose, and what we're trying to recommend to the new administration is to phase it in, like you say. Let's get decriminalization done. Let's bring in the SAFE Act. Let banks get the money in the system, and then long term,
the MORE
Act is decriminalization, and I don't want to do the whole MORE Act. I only want to do decriminalization right now because we're just not ready. Like what Leslie's saying is we're not ready to go full legalization because we're going to have all these problems. So another thing I want to back up just a little bit on standards and regulatory people. A lot of people say, "Oh, we don't need any regulations," and that's entirely false because a strong regulatory body is what enables the industry to move forward.
Right.
Because if you have all these people getting sick and you have all these people dying, which nobody's ever done, but you have contaminants in the cannabis, all these different problems, then the industry can't grow.
Right.
Exactly.
Tell them, Mike.
So
100%.
So Leslie's on the same page with me with that. But Lezli, I want to say thank you so much for coming on the show. Please tell everybody how they can get a hold of you.
Yeah, you can visit our website at focusstandards.org. You can also find us at cannabisstandards.com. I'm on LinkedIn under Lezli. Focus is on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, all at Focus Standards. And we've got contact forms all over our website. So we're here to help. If you are looking for questions to be answered or just want some more information, please reach out. We're here.
That's awesome. So everybody, Lezli Engelking from Focus, the foundation of Cannabis Unified Standards. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Lezli.
I really appreciate it, you guys.
All right.
See ya.
See you later. Okay, Jesse, let's go to the tip of the day. The Cannabis Entrepreneur Tip of the Day. Tip of the Day is sponsored by Hemp Synergistics. From intelligent-based hemp-based consumer products and ingredients, Hemp Synergistics is a biotechnology company whose goal is to make a meaningful difference in the hemp industry. For more information, go to hempsynergistics.com.
All right. So the entrepreneurial tip is you must plant the seed to have it grow.
Right.
Think about it. If you're going to get in this business, you're like, hey, man, I know all these people and I'm going to get involved and we're going to make $1 gazillion in 6 months. It's just not going to happen. So think about what you're dealing with. We're dealing with a plant, okay? When you have a plant, you have to put a seed in the ground, or you do a clone. That's a whole nother story. But anyway, you got to put it in the ground as it doesn't grow right away. So you have to wait and wait.
What you sow.
You nurture it. You give it water. You give it nutrients. You talk love to it. You hug it, whatever. And then 3, 4, 5 months, depending on your strain, it'll go into harvest, and then you have a business. You have something you're doing. So think about that from the cannabis side is you are going to have to plant thousands of seeds, and not all of them are going to grow. And so a lot of times I use the analogy of a Major League Baseball player. So if you're a baseball player and you hit 3 balls out of 10, and you get a base hit, then you're batting 300, a 300 average. That average can get you in the Hall of Fame. So if you take that adage into the cannabis space and say for every 10 meetings that I do, only 3 will turn into something, or even less. And so what I spend a lot of my time is meeting new people online and working through my network to see how we can all be synergistic, because I need to understand what's going on in the industry and meet all these new people because so many people are coming in. But an example of this is specifically LinkedIn. So if you look at my page on LinkedIn, I have over 32,000 followers now. When I started 5, 6, 7 years ago, I had 0, and I had to work up and I had to go move it up and move it up. And so I knew that if I kept doing that over and over and over, eventually LinkedIn will be able to work for me, and I'm not having to do all the work theoretically on LinkedIn. And now 90% of all my referrals come through LinkedIn from all over the world. And if you're in America, almost 70% of LinkedIn members are outside of the United States. So this industry is global. Yeah, it's huge. And so there's over 750 million people on LinkedIn, and the list keeps growing. And so for cannabis, LinkedIn is the social media network for the cannabis industry. Another example I have is the National Football League. So years ago, the National Football League said, hey, we're going to look at our cannabis policy. And so I'm thinking, okay, well, I'm a new business. How can I, and I know a lot about this and I understand how to help them. How can I get my message out? Can I send them an email that they'll never read? Can I go on their website and say something that I could do this? They'll probably never get in touch with me. So I said, you know what? I'm going to write them a letter, like an old-fashioned letter, and I put it on my company letterhead and wrote out how the industry is going to evolve and if you need assistance in doing the logistical aspect. Because imagine if you made cannabis legal for NFL players could use it back at this time, it'd be a logistical nightmare. So long story short, I sent the letter to Roger Goodell, the commissioner, as well as all their medical team, and this was 2018. Yeah. Around there. Ago. And so sent it all in the mail, had it all stamped, everything.
I remember you told me all about it.
Right. And then guess what happened? Nothing happened. Right. So year goes by, and then I go, in 2019, I go to the Lake Nona Impact Forum, where this is in Orlando, Florida. It's kind of like the Davos of the economic aspect, the Davos of Switzerland. So basically, it's a healthcare forum. People come from all over the world. I got to meet Sanjay Gupta at this meeting, which is really cool. And I was the only cannabis guy there. So I'm sitting there, and then the last day of the show, there were people up on stage, and one of them happened to be the NFL medical director. So I was like, "Oh, okay, great. I can go up and talk to him and say something." So afterwards, I go up to him and say, "Hey, I'm Michael Patterson with U.S. Cannabis Pharmaceutical." And you know what he said?
Tell me, Mike.
He said, "I know who you are."
Boom!
I was like, "Really?"
That's a little bit get you some.
So it was like, wow, they actually read it. Mm-hmm. So it's like, hey, let's get a meeting set up and let's talk about this. And so we did that, and it went nowhere. So again, it's planting seed. Well, then this year, if you noticed in the collective bargaining agreement, that the NFL came up and they said that they're going to you're not going to get penalized for using cannabis, but they're going to test it 1 time per year. So they gave everybody advance notice, and so just don't, basically it's okay. Well, during this time, what people never saw is we were behind the scenes because I knew them at the NFL now, so I could sit there and show them, I think this would be a better way to go. We wanted them to come out and have a whole policy on how to educate the players, how to educate them on using it in a medicinal way, and really take advantage of this. Well, obviously they didn't. They decided not to do anything with that. But the point is that I now have a rapport with the NFL. Doesn't mean they're going to listen to me, but at least I have that door that's open, and then that door will turn into something else down the road. So you're going to have situations where you have to count your victories, and it's not always going to be a victory where you get a check at the end, right? Because a lot of this is building those relationships over time. Because say if I'm talking to the NFL, nothing happens, but then somebody gets my name from the CFL, the Canadian Football League, which did happen. So we have talked to the Canadian Football League, and then I've gotten some calls from the NHL. People, former players that want to talking about the Players Association. So remember, it all has to build over time. You have to plant all these seeds. And so now I've been in the industry now 8 years, and a lot of those seeds I've been planting are all just now starting to come to fruition. Yeah. So it's taken this long, but my goals are massive. I want to sort of sit there and change the planet through using cryptocurrency to be able to help the cannabis industry as well as others. We want to be able to set up international trade for cannabis all over the world, because this is what needs to happen for everybody else to come into the industry and thrive. And so we have to build that base of support for the industry.
But the positive, the thing about this industry, the positive is that there's so much opportunity, and that like all this stuff has not been done before. But the negative is all this stuff hasn't been done before.
Right.
So it takes a lot longer. We've both from different industries. It takes a lot longer in cannabis in order to get stuff done, because there's literally no infrastructure. We are the ones that are watching this program right now are the ones that are going to be developing that.
Right.
And that's what we're trying to reinforce, is that you are part of the solution.
Right. And I'll give you another example of planting the seeds. So was it 2 years ago, 2019? So around Christmas time, I'm on LinkedIn, because I'm always on LinkedIn. Anyway, so there's a lady who was a lawyer, and she worked for the Florida State University School of Business as an adjunct professor. And I sent her an instant message or DM on LinkedIn. I said, hey, if you ever need a cannabis expert to talk to your class, let me know, and I'd love to do it. And she responded, hey, that's great. 6 months go by, didn't hear anything. Out of nowhere, I get a LinkedIn instant message. Hey, I'm ready to do your show. I'm ready for you to do the class. The next month, we had a class in front of all their entrepreneurial students. And then that turned into, hey, that was great. Can you do one for our law school? I'll be like, absolutely, I can do one for the law school.
Okay.
Right. So did I get paid for that? No, I did not get paid for that. But remember, if you're going to do this, it's not all about getting the check at the end of the day, because you're an entrepreneur. If you want to get a check at the end of the day, then don't be an entrepreneur. Go sit there and go work for somebody and sit there and get a paycheck every day. It's different. So you have to build it up so where down the road you can sit there and make a lot more money and be able to create all this stuff. It doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah, but I mean, obviously, you can go work for somebody and learn that business, and then you're going to find out in a lot of these different cannabis industries that you're like, you know what, I think I can do that better.
I agree with you.
And so you get that experience working for a guy, and that's what a lot of people have done. And then they go, you know what, I have a better idea. I think I can do it this way.
Which I agree with, but...
What is this? Why do you keep doing like that? If you're on camera, he's putting his hand right near me.
Because I'm trying to get your
attention. You want
attention.
to be close, Mike?
Really?
We've been close enough.
Yes.
Okay.
So what I'm saying is that, yes, but once you make that leap into the entrepreneurial journey, even if you have funding...
Yeah.
It's still a jump, and you just need to understand it's just a different way of doing things, because if you're going to be the boss or the person running this show, it's totally different, because you're going to be sitting there and having difficulty, and everybody, you're going to make all the decisions, and all the good and bad is going to fall on your shoulders. It's just something good to know.
Well, thank you, Mike, for the tip of the day, and someone who's already a champion in this industry, our Cannabis Champion of the Week. The Cannabis Champion of the Week. Cannabis Champion of the Week, sponsored by the World CBD Awards. If you want to be part of the world's only objective product awards competition, the World CBD Awards Conference and Gala is for you. For more information, go to worldcbdawards.com.
All right. So
that's your key, Mike.
Thank you. So today we're talking about a wonderful lady from Tampa, Florida, and her name is Alice O'Leary Randall. And so this is directly from Alice's LinkedIn page. I officially retired as a hospice nurse in September 2012 and returned to an issue that I know well, medical marijuana. My late husband, Robert Randall, is the acknowledged founder of the modern American medical marijuana movement.
Wow.
In 1976, he became the first American to obtain federal supplies of marijuana for medical purposes due to his glaucoma.
Oh, is that what they put it in that big tin?
In a big old tin.
Yeah.
He was the first one ever.
Really?
Yes.
And I heard it was trash cannabis.
Anyway, she didn't get into that. For several years, he was the only individual receiving such access, and he often said he felt like, quote, the only one to make the lifeboat, end quote.
Wow.
For more than 2 decades, we worked to remove the prohibitions against marijuana medical use, and we had great success. Robert died in 2001, and for a decade, I took a break from the medical marijuana issue, pursuing my personal interest in hospice and working with Tidewell Hospice for 6 years. In 2013, I started renovating a property in North Carolina and began to re-engage in the medical cannabis issue. In 2014, those efforts paid off, completing her book, Medical Marijuana in America, Memoir of a Pioneer, which is available on Amazon.com. And Alice is the author of Pain Free with CBD, which was published by Rockridge, Rockridge, Rockridge Press in December 2019. And if you'd like to learn more about Alice and her story, visit AliceO'LearyRandall.com, which is AliceO'LearyRandall.com. So I want to thank Alice for everything that she's done for our industry, as well as her late husband, and that is the Cannabis Champion of the Week.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Isn't it amazing?
To have somebody in Tampa that was, close to home. And I saw a documentary on not him, but one of those other guys that, he had to subpoena to, the United States, and then he got, cannabis from the government, and it came in that tin, and it was like 100 joints.
I know.
And then he was driving in Fort Lauderdale on this documentary and just hanging out, smoking a J, and then everybody's like, "Oh, look at you, you're smoking that J," or whatever. He's like, "This is medicine," and everybody started laughing at him. But that was like 15, 20 years ago, so it's kind of amazing how, that was right at the very start. The first patient ever in order to get, medical cannabis by the government, and wow, look at where you are now.
Well, and also think about it now is generations of children have grown up in America, and cannabis has never been illegal.
Right.
So for them, it's not a big deal.
Right.
My daughter, she's like, your stuff is boring. All you do is talk on the phone. That's what she says all the time. Now she's at college and university now, but growing up when I was doing this, she didn't really understand it. She knew about marijuana, but she didn't understand about how everything's moving professional and everything's moving to a corporate structure, and it's starting to evolve across all aspects of society, across the world, not just here, which is really exciting. All right, that's the end of our show, and that's the way it is in the world of cannabis today.
That's right.
The power of change is within all of us, and the world changes when we change. Definitely had a great time. Thanks so much for your help.
I had a great time, Mike. I'm glad you asked.
Yeah.
Jesse, did you have a good time today?
Jesse had a great time. We don't let him talk much.
He mumbled yes.
And always remember,
we don't give him a microphone.
It's my tagline. Always remember, we are all we need. Till next time.